I don't know what they're smoking over there at Princeton.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive through any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We still do the show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. It turns out that you just don't run out of fucking Galaxy Brain content. It just keeps happening constantly. You can support this project at Patreon, patreon.com/Echoplex. I'd prefer you go to eplex.store and sign up for a membership there, but I know a lot of people already do Patreon, and so I don't want you to not give me money because you don't want to sign up for something new, but also signing up for something new over at eplex.store is dope. I don't know. I'm producer Dave, and for the time being, you can still find me on Grindr, although one of them people be trying to keep me.
It's a big universe, and there's lots of galaxy brains to fill it. I'm HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social.
Fantastic. So we're going to go back to one of the people, we'll call them a foundational galaxy brain to our Intellectual Dollar Tree universe. No, it's not Sam Harris. His shit has been fucking super boring lately, and I don't want to listen to him talk about the white race anymore. I know we put this guy on academic probation, but we're going to go ahead and let him out of the little fucking little mind cell we put him in. This is Bret Weinstein on the Tom Billio Show. This is America's Collapse, Don Lemon versus Elon Musk, Racism, Hitler, and Rising War. I saw this title. I was like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and run this one, actually. It's a hell of a title. What do you think, HK?
Yes. That is a hell of a title.
The correct answer, HK, the correct answer was no.
No, the correct answer is yes. That's a hell of a title. That is that is a yikes of a title. How about that?
This Tom Billio guy is so funny too, because he just sits there and is like acts like he's a fucking. He doesn't really ask questions, and to the extent that he doesn't really like do anything to encourage his guests to answer them. So he like just basically phones it in every time, and he's got almost 4.20 million subscribers. Almost got to 420 in time for 420, but I bet this guy doesn't smoke weed.
So this is someone interviewing Bret.
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately for everyone involved, except the guy with 4 million subscribers, I suppose.
Naive, not at least publicly entertaining the possibility that our antagonists abroad would take advantage of our famous lack of security. And you're going to see why we have to talk about genocide. Somebody has to open these topics if we are to get past them and not have them haunt our future.
Why has it become a meme to say that America is collapsing like the Roman Empire?
He looks like he
Growth has
skates.
petered out.
I wonder if
Far
he
from the
skates.
future.
I
We
bet he tries to look like he skates.
Okay.
can't do that anymore.
Remember that Avril Lavigne song, Skater Boy? Wasn't about him. It was not about Tom Bilyeu.
We're getting tribal.
Yes, but I don't believe that it is hopeless. If I'm honest, I believe we will probably screw it up and it will become inevitable.
Lovely.
Yeah. But there's a reason that I'm taking the risks that I am to talk about these things in public, which is I believe we still have the potential to rescue Western civilization and probably, if I'm honest about it, to present a 2.0 version that is capable of dealing with the novelty that the 1.0 version is straining under. The key thing is human beings detect the failure of growth, because the failure of growth is not an economic fact.
What?
It's a fact of resource scarcity, and it has applied to all of our
Oh, this is going to be fucking fantastic. This is going to be one of those where I turn it off at like fucking an hour and 10 minutes and I'm like, I can't take this anymore.
What did that mean? What
That's
he
a-
just said?
That's a good fucking question. Good fucking question.
ancestors for 3.5 billion years. So it's not that, growth didn't get invented in a modern economic context. Economics formalized an understanding of something.
Oh, at a dinner party, you know what guy I didn't notice? The Bret's this. You ever met like a guy at a party? If you're talking to him, as the party gets louder, instead of him talking more loudly, he'll actually talk more quietly so that it's harder and you have to pay more attention to what he's saying. Have you ever met somebody like that?
I don't recall. I feel like I would just walk away. Be like, all right, I can't hear you. I'll talk to you later.
I can't hear you over the fucking party that's happening that you're not participating in. He's like, but I have some really interesting philosophical ideas.
But I wanted to talk to you about Kant. And,
Have you tried the wine? Have you tried the wine?
that is as primal as anything else. What must be true in order for us not to descend into this other phase, the phase where musical chairs, the music stops and there are way too few chairs, in which blood is thicker than water, and that's the rule that governs the day. The way to avoid that fate is to A, recognize that it predicts a great deal about the noises people will make as it's happening. So I'm watching.
Motherfucker, could you fucking say something crazy or something? Like, what the fuck is this? What happened to this guy? Why isn't he saying crazy things? Why is he just saying nothing with a lot of words now? He's gone back to his original form.
he's probably gearing up for the crazy. I don't think that he's going to be non-crazy for very long.
He's getting older and he can't blow his load over and over and over again.
Oh my God, Dave.
The shocking rise in anti-Semitism, and I'm thinking it's right on time.
Why?
Because
Wait, why? What about the question is who? Because I know what he means. He just means campus protests against the Likud-controlled government of the nation-state of Israel, right? But he doesn't mean like actual fucking Nazis just getting like blue check marks and retweeted by the guy that owns Twitter. That's not what he's talking about. He means like criticism of a nation-state.
did my work back in college about Hitler as a rational monster, I understood that the targeting of Jews was a predictable phenomenon. That Jews, because they live as a diaspora, and because they succeed as a diaspora, are an obvious target when the music stops. You can transfer.
Get very concrete about that. Why does being
Get very easy. Yeah, that's a good fucking luck, dude. Good luck, Tom. Get very concrete about that.
So in his analogy of musical chairs, what does the music stopping represent here?
I don't know, and I'd hate to be at his game of musical chairs, right? Because the music wouldn't even be good.
I think he meant it as like it represents like where there's scarcity and people need to fight each other for like survival, but there's no scarcity.
Well, there's some scarcity, like
I mean, there's scarcity in Gaza because of Israel blocking aid getting in there.
And I mean, certain things are scarce. I mean, that's why certain things are expensive. But I that's the thing is, I don't think he's. I mean, that's a good guess. That's better than a guess that I would have wagered. Because if I would have wagered a guess, I'd have been like, I think he was just playing musical chairs the other night at the world's worst dinner party, and it's been on his mind, and he was like, I have to work this in. Actually, it'll make me sound smart. Oh, his game of musical chairs.
Everyone's gonna be so impressed.
His game of musical chairs, by the way, the music is so quiet that you can barely hear it. And so actually the trick is hearing when the music stops. It's not so much like a random game so much as a hearing test.
It's one of those weird songs where there's lots of pauses in between the notes. You're like, is that did it stop? Doot. Okay, it didn't stop.
Song is like 1 beats per minute, and it's just drums.
diaspora, which for people that aren't familiar with that, you're an outside group living in another country. So people often refer to the Chinese as being part of a diaspora because they have a strong sense of the homeland, but yet they may live somewhere else.
Yep. So let's say you've got a population and it's industrious and capable for whatever reason. I would argue that those reasons are largely cultural, maybe entirely so. But it accumulates some wealth, it achieves some position in society, and then the racist impulses return. And one way that you can generate growth for a population is to come up with an excuse to transfer the wealth of another population. So the obvious thing to do is to say, well, geez, the reason that Germany lost World War I was a Jewish fifth column, and the sorry state of Germany today is the result of being stabbed in the back by these people. I mean, maybe they shouldn't even be called people. Maybe they're vermin, they're disease, they're disgusting, right? You start making those noises and you justify a significant transfer of wealth from one population to another. And this goes back to the question about the founding.
What does he feel about Israeli settlers taking the homes of Palestinians?
I don't think that he's interested in getting into specifics, right? So I don't know. So I don't know why I don't know why we're asking that. I don't think he's going to get into specifics about this.
Okay.
I I would like him to, because it would give us a little more to hang on to, but we're only 4 minutes and 38 seconds into this so far. So the fact that he hasn't really said anything is fine. For the first 4 minutes, for the first 4 minutes and 38 seconds of our show, we're playing a song and introducing ourselves. So,
fathers, obviously, the time period is different. But if you imagine that Germany, prior to the Holocaust, was a place that involved a few lineages, and then one lineage starts playing against the others, right?
Well, you don't have to imagine that, Bret. That's called the history of post-World War I, pre-World War II Germany. This isn't something you have to imagine. I don't like the word lineages because it's like it smells a little like eugenics and like racist ideas about like bloodlines. But this isn't a thing to imagine. He's describing in a probably abbreviated and historically inaccurate way some of the things that led to the Third Reich.
Mm-hmm. Without having to invent a new technology or discover some more efficient way of accomplishing something, it's phony growth. what is it made of? It's made of the stuff that the people you're killing are leaving behind. It's made of their homes, right? You're creating something that feels like growth for one population by targeting another population. And when that happens inside of a landmass, we call it genocide. And when it happens across a border, we call it war.
Well, no, you could be at war with another country and also genocide them. Actually, you could. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying can is the wrong word because I don't think like I would try to. For example, I would try to stop you, but those are not mutually. Those are not. It's not either like. Oh, what a dumb fucking thing.
I believe genocide is when you're targeting one specific ethnicity, right? Isn't that what genocide means? Or I guess it could also be like nationality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah.
you can definitely do that during a war.
And it's like indiscriminate too. Whereas like, generally like the rules of war are that like you don't target civilians.
Right. And the I mean, it's funny that we have rules for war, but it's a little I think it's a little lie that people tell themselves.
Yep.
Same process, right? You come up with an excuse to attack some population that can't defend itself, and you create the appearance of growth through theft, right? I mean, if you had a company and it could steal from some other company, it would feel like, oh, well, the value of this company just rose. And the point is, yes, you took stuff from somebody else. So I knew
Companies do that all the time. They're not like stealing a building, but they're like ripping off other companies' ideas all the time. They always, Bret, they always do that. That's how the big companies, especially the big tech companies, have become. They either, to be fair, I even think just acquiring some company and then like dissolving the company, keeping a few of the engineers and using their IP is pretty fucking close to theft anyway. Like I don't, a few people got rich, but you're still I mean, it's still a kid. It's still like a cousin of theft, right?
Yeah, it's I guess more like eating something.
Right. It's like sure you paid for it, but the chicken is still dead.
Yeah.
that at the point that the growth ran out, you were going to get rabid anti-Semitism, and frankly, it precedes other forms of virulent racism, but you're going to see those too. And I know where this heads. You're going to come up with
when the growth ran out. What growth is he talking about?
Yeah, this is weird. Also, he said, I can see where this heads, but he's talking about known history, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we saw it. I mean, I wasn't here, but if you believe the mainstream media about the events of the World War II and leading up to it, yeah, we could see it. What is he talking about? Bret, you're not predicting history. It already happened. What is he talking about?
Doing away with people who aren't entitled to what they have, and that does end in genocide. So, I think the bad news is this is where we are in history. The good news is we actually have much better tools than we did when this happened previously to understand what's taking place and to change course. But the way you would have to do that is you would have to create a mechanism whereby the population was immunized from the immediate sense of peril that comes when you run out of new ways to generate well-being. Right? When growth is
run out of new ways to generate well-being. Why do you need new ways to generate well-being?
Right, some of the old ways work great.
Yeah, what does he mean like you can't sustain a population growth? Is that what he means?
Yeah, he's trying I think he's trying to make like a liberal or like a left argument that like infinite growth is impossible, right? But the problem is that he's using too many fucking words. And so his point is getting lost. Like, if you have like, it's not alphabet soup anymore. If it's just it's just a bunch of broth and a few letters, right? So I don't even know if that's like a good, but he's alphabet soup with all broth and no letters is what he's doing here.
Yeah. So like, how like when you just sharpen a pencil, the point is like really sharp and easy to see. Yeah, his pencil is just wood. There's not even graphite there.
He probably took the graphite and made a supplement out of it.
And the fact that our institutions pretend like all you've got to do, is keep the thing pointed in the right direction and there will always be plenty of growth. That's not true. Growth comes from somewhere, and it does not come from that somewhere regularly. You cannot just create a system that hums along and is always making new stuff. There's boom and there's bust, and you can't afford to have the bust triggering these genocidal impulses, which is what they will do if you don't figure out how to address the question.
Do you remember the great genocide that happened after the .com bust in 2000? The Pets.com didn't stand a chance, HK. Everyone that worked there is dead.
The horrible .com genocides.
So
I still don't know. Is he talking about like actual, like Israel's actual genocide, or like some hypothetical genocide?
HK, he's not. He gave you.
So he's talking like he's just making up some hypothetical genocide, saying like we can't criticize Israel or else we're going to have this genocide happen.
He's not. I'm the one who gets the emails. HK. I'm the one who gets the complaints. I want to focus on what he said, and he just gave us a brief kind of crappy history of Germany post World War I, and acted like it was economic stress that caused the fucking genocide.
Well, like he's making an analogy to now. So
he said that there's anti-Semitism on the rise. So that's all he said about now.
Okay.
So I just like to stay kind of focused on what's being said and not draw too many inferences, because it's not like we're going to be hurting for dumb things that Bret's going to say if they do get into the weeds about this stuff.
One in Ukraine and Russia, one in Israel, Gaza.
I told you.
Are they both the genocidal impulse?
This is tricky. I will say...
Here's the part you want, HK, except he's not going to say anything.
Something is going on in Ukraine, and if there's one thing I know, it's that I don't know enough to understand it. Okay. There's the obvious part of it.
Is it hard to understand?
Russia having attacked a sovereign nation, and now a generation of young men have been sacrificed to this battle. So I have nothing but compassion for the Ukrainian people in that circumstance. But I also know that there was a question about NATO expansion, and NATO behaved in a way that did not allay Russia's fears. And more to the point, I know that my own government is in the hands of people who had their hands on stuff inside of Ukraine utterly mysteriously before this war broke out. Why is the son of the president involved as some kind of energy expert inside of Ukraine?
Nepotism, Bret. Nepotism. That's it. Nepotism.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. Nepotism.
Yeah. Also, like, that's not illegal, and it's also not really immoral either. So, what is his problem with it?
Whether or not it's immoral, it certainly isn't a declaration of war.
Yeah. So, I think what he's getting at is Russia was upset that NATO was a thing, and NATO was like, okay. And then Russia was like, oh, but you better not expand anymore. And NATO was like, well, maybe we will. So Russia was like, okay, let's attack our neighbor.
For the second time.
Yeah. Let's attack our neighbor in 2014, steal some of their land, and then attack them again in their mainland.
Right, attack them again in the part that we didn't already steal.
Yep.
The first time the juice was worth the squeeze the first time. So let's see if we take a bigger piece of fruit and squeeze it and see if the juice is worth the squeeze there too.
Yep.
This is a story about things I don't know, right? So I can't say
you can learn them, Bret.
Genocide maps onto the conflict in Ukraine. I can say it's a complicated puzzle.
It's really not hard. The whole NATO thing is just an excuse. Putin wants to recreate the USSR.
In some ways, yeah. And the the thing is that NATO had not expanded, and now there are countries that weren't in NATO that are interested in joining the North Atlantic Treaty Organization because of Russia's aggression, we'll call it.
Yep.
Ukraine was never, because they border Russia. Like again, like these people that run NATO are fucking warmongering monsters, but they're not stupid. They don't want to fucking start World War III.
Yeah.
Like, all these people are like rational actors, and I think a lot of people forget that, is that like they're not good, but that doesn't mean they're fucking off their fucking rockers. Like, this is all really first of all, like him admitting that he doesn't know in this case is really interesting, because he fucking otherwise knows everything, actually, so far as we fucking list. I mean, second only to the most humble man in the world, his brother. This guy knows everything, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't know? That's because he in this case, he doesn't want to take a position on this that'll piss his audience off, because a lot of his audience are like Russophiles, right? A lot of his audience are like kind of confused pro-Putin, sort of faux libertarians, kind of.
Yep.
And so if somebody asks me about that, I'm going to be like, well, it seems like they invaded their neighbor without provocation, and that's bad, because they are a nuclear superpower. And they probably shouldn't do that shit, because that's bad. I don't understand. And whether or not it's a genocide, I guess history will tell. Also, notice he focused on men. He's like, oh, we're sacrificing a generation of young men. And it's like, well, who the fuck you think lives in the buildings that are bombed out? Like, that's all kind of people, actually, live in those buildings that get bombed out. So that's a little bit weird, too.
The bombs don't naturally avoid women and children.
Also, the Russian and Ukrainian military, the women serve in both of those militaries. Yep. Especially once you're an insurgent force, you take everybody, actually. Now there's no you just like, oh, you want to fight? Here's a gun. Like, you don't have much choice. And, even if there weren't women in the military, well, now there are.
Israel and Gaza. The unspeakable truth is that you have innocent people trapped on both sides of that conflict, and you have a genocidal influence on both sides of that conflict. It's something I don't think I've said that publicly. I've implied it, and I've hoped that people would get it, and I've been told by both sides that I'm a terrible person.
So I would agree with what he said there, but the thing that he's not saying is that one of them actually is committing a genocide.
Right. And even for those who would say that maybe history will tell whether or not this is a genocide, there's certainly only one side with the means to carry it out.
Yep.
Right. There's certainly only one side with the means to carry it out. Do some right-wing like religious groups in the Islamic world want to kill all the Jewish people? Yes, actually. Yes, that's not.
Yep.
It's just they don't really, especially like in the occupied territories, they certainly don't have the means to do a whole lot of it. And
although I do doubt that the little kids that Israel is bombing really are genocidal. Like, I don't feel like kids are in general genocidal.
Right. And I also think that, like, if people have to understand that there hasn't been an election there since 2006. So the people there haven't even really picked their leadership in almost 20 years. And a lot of the people there were born after 2006. And I think impulse for revenge against nation state that bombed the fuck out of your neighborhood is a lot different than a genocidal impulse.
Yep.
That's like really important to note here too. Like, revenge and genocide are very different things. And like I said, like I said about this, like a week into it, I was like, okay, after the attack on October 7th, the first day was the response, the second day was revenge, and by the third or fourth day, something else is going on, right? Like, as we saw that, I'm like, oh, nope, this isn't even revenge anymore. This is something else. This is not, this is not. It's still going on.
Yep.
you'd think you could have your revenge. You know, it's like if I punch you in the face and then you punch me in the face 4 times, I'm like, well, that'll teach me to punch HK in the face. But that'd be a little bit different if then you start stabbing me. Right?
Yeah. Like if you punch me in the face and I fucking vaporize you with like an air to surface missile, that's a bit of an overreaction.
More than a bit. Luckily, you don't have surface to air missiles, and luckily, I don't fly.
No, I said air to surface missile.
Oh, air to surface missile.
Like I bomb you from the air.
So, but again, just like one of the things, and he's not going to bring it up, is like who has the means, and it ain't.
Yep.
It ain't the Palestinians, and it ain't Hamas. Like
what I said at the beginning of the conflict was that it was threatening to drag the entire world back into lineage against lineage violence. That if we want to save the West and save the world, we have to rescue the Middle East from this predicament, because I don't think either side is being irrational. I think they both understand that they are in a fight to the death, and in a fight to the death, the rules are quite different.
They're not, though.
well, I mean, there might be people who believe that, but like I said, at this point, it's just too much, too long. Come on now, you're not even doing. It's just not revenge anymore, and I really don't want to get bogged down into like the discussion on the conflict here. I've made my position pretty clear, and you've made your position pretty clear.
But like, how can he say that like Israel bombing like teenagers looking for food in an airdrop? How can he say that that's like defending yourself? That
Well,
there's any sort of threat to Israel?
He just said that in a fight to the death, the rules are different. And I mean, I would suggest that that's not an inaccurate statement. I just don't know that that most of the people are on. I don't think the average Israeli is in a fight to the death. I think there's only one side that's in a fight for their lives at this point, right? And
yep.
The fight for your life is, can I be lucky enough not to have a bomb fall on my fucking head? And yeah, this is,
or like if I do have a bomb fall on my head and I somehow manage to survive, should I go to the hospital, or is that going to get bombed tomorrow if I go there?
So there are clearly a majority in Israel who wish to be part of the modern world, would like to get along with their neighbors. I believe that is clear. I cannot say the same thing about the leadership, and I am particularly troubled by the fact that Netanyahu himself, who I must say engaged in absolutely alarming behavior during the pandemic, also appears to have been a facilitator of Hamas in advance of October 7th.
okay. So the alarming behavior during the pandemic was literally, I think we know what he means. He means just doing what public health officials said.
Yep.
That's it. That's what, and I think even Tom Bilyeu is like, well, this doesn't have anything to do with any. No, I think he's going to be like, could you expand on that? Could you tell us more? Oh, great sage.
In what way?
Oh, see, I do it. Like, you see that was the I'm going to ask you a question face, and then he didn't ask that. That was, what the fuck was that? In what way?
Yep.
Scene is video that appears to be Netanyahu advocating for the cynical fueling of Hamas for the purpose of dividing the Palestinians. Now, my feeling is, whatever that was,
What?
everybody who participated in any way in making October 7th occur has no business anywhere near any kind of power. This is the last person that should be in charge of a military engagement in Gaza. And I don't know what his motives are. I honestly can't say. All I can say is that he appears to be a madman. And
I can tell you what his actions are.
Right. And
Do his motives matter?
I mean, I think his motives are the same as like any wartime person who thinks they're a wartime leader. The conflict makes it so people are going to rally behind the leader. I think that's like that. You don't need to make too many assumptions around that, right? Like had 9/11 not happened, I don't think George W. Bush would have been reelected, right? But he was a wartime president now. And so he actually won the fucking popular vote. I know this is not the same scenario, but people, there's this, I don't want to change the fucking leader during the war thing. I think he's doing this to like, probably just to fucking save his political career or whatever. He's always wanted to be in charge. So I don't know, but again, like that's the obvious one. Who fucking knows what else it is?
But his actions are what really matters, because his actions are attacking civilians in Gaza.
And the other thing that's sort of important here, and I want to put a pin in this, is no matter what, Bret has to posit a conspiracy theory. I don't know that the Israeli government was propping up Hamas in the way that Bret is trying to describe here, right? I just don't know that. That's way into the weeds, right? Just way into the weeds, but sure is a nice fucking conspiracy to posit, because now it's now the leader of this nation state actually propped up this thing, and it sort of is sort of flirting with the idea of like a false flag, or like how we talk about like shootings in the US where like the government planned it or whatever. It's sort of like kind of flirting with that territory. And I think I think the answer, if it was enabled by the government of Israel, I think the answer is probably like more boring and procedural than conspiratorial, right? But again, I don't know. Notice how he's talking with. Notice how when he was talking about Ukraine, he was like, "I don't really know. Who knows? Maybe Putin's the bad guy. Whatever." Now he has all the fucking answers, right? Because this is about people with the wrong imaginary friend and people with some version of the right imaginary friend, I suppose. Now he's got answers. In fact, he's got fucking detailed conspiratorial answers.
Yep.
Imagine that. Well, that's weird how that shakes out, isn't it?
Do you think that Netanyahu is responsible for October 7th?
If what I have seen that I believe to be credible evidence of his arguing to fund Hamas, if that is accurate, then he is responsible in some way.
In like a conspiratorial, hey guys, here's the money, I know you're going to do it kind of way?
If we believe in the consent of the governed, and somebody else from outside.
He didn't like that question. Yeah, Tom accidentally just asked a pretty good question, actually. He's like, was it just kind of quid pro quo or what? And Bret's like, well, he's like, I'm going to just shift here.
Acts to choose your leaders. And those leaders behave badly. And you suffer mightily because of the bad behavior of leaders that somebody else chose for you. You're responsible. Do I know what he was really thinking? How would I know? I couldn't possibly be more of an outsider to this.
Is this a hypothesis or a thesis?
No, it's an extrapolation. I don't know how it could be any clearer.
Oh my God, fucking galaxy brain. So he doesn't have to like present the evidence, but he mentioned that there was evidence for the thing he was claiming. He could just maybe give a summary of what he's seen for the claim. Like even, you don't have to bring like your fucking paperwork and shit, but like some summary of the stuff that he's seen here would be fairly reasonable, maybe.
He mentioned one thing that Netanyahu said, and I've never heard of that thing. I've never heard of.
I mean, I don't know everything that Netanyahu said. Just because you've never heard of it doesn't mean you didn't say it.
But like, I would imagine someone else would have brought that up other than Bret Weinstein.
Yeah, I don't know
if that were a big deal. So I don't know.
Palestinians are people.
Well, thank you. You're doing better than Sam Harris.
Yep.
That's great. We'll take the small victories where we can get them here, because this is the show that it is.
I believe that the right that allows me, as a governed person, consent over that process of governance extends to all people, or it should.
Do you think it matters where we define a people? Is that a relevant part of this, or it just?
He just asked. He's like, "What do you mean, people?" Good question, Tom. What do you mean? This is pretty clearly defined. Like the Palestinians, like we don't need to. I mean, I don't even think I need to explain what it means. They're like a group of people defined by the boundaries of where they're allowed to go by the occupying forces. That's what they are. So I don't know what else to tell you.
You know, this is going to drag us.
Because I don't know if you're saying that based on the UN Charter, which talks about a people and there are certain protections afforded to them, or if you just mean, look, any group of people, whether it's somebody in a city or whatever.
Look, if you're going to be governed, you have a right to consent in the consent of the governed sense of that term. I believe people have a right to self-determination. I am not an expert on Palestinians or the Palestinian mindset. I do not know what the people.
There are a lot of implications to what he's saying.
Like what?
Like what about an immigrant who is working in another country? Do they have then a say in the government of that country?
Different countries have
there are situations where that doesn't apply. So I don't know if he just hasn't thought about those, or if he's just talking about general populations and not including immigrants.
Different countries have different rules. Like you can immigrate after you've had a work visa or whatever. Like,
but you
can become a citizen.
In the USA, you can't vote until you become a citizen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it depends who you ask, right?
But like, even though you can't vote, you're still governed by the United States.
Yeah, but in some, like, as much as I would like to spend time talking about this, I think that it's reasonable to think that if somebody's here on a work visa, they're not a citizen and they can't vote. And if they'd like to become a citizen, they can go ahead and do that, and then they can vote. I think.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's unreasonable. I'm just saying that like Bret's saying this as if it's like a 100% unbreakable rule, and I just think that there are times where that's not the case, and it shouldn't even be the case.
Yeah, but I think he's talking probably at population level, not at the level of the individual. Okay. Although he keeps using I statements, but that shouldn't surprise you at all, actually.
Meddling.
He literally thinks the government should have his consent personally to do anything, so.
It would have been the same thing. I don't know what Israel is supposed to do in light.
I wonder if he's ever going to become a sovereign citizen. Screaming, "I do not consent" at a police officer breaking his window.
I don't know what Israel is supposed to do in light of this absolutely barbaric attack.
Revenge, and then stop.
But I do know that whatever engaged in that attack put Israel in a bind. There was no way for Israel not to respond to that attack. The brutality was calculated to make it impossible for Israel to choose. It was calculated to bring about a response that would be overwhelming because somebody thought that was a good idea. Presumably Hamas.
There are ways to respond to that attack that don't result in killing civilians, though, and that's not what Israel did.
I would say
that Israel bombed hospitals.
There are ways to respond to that don't include fucking almost 6 months of bombardment.
Yeah.
Like,
there are many ways to respond appropriately to that. Israel chose none of them.
Right. And we can quibble on appropriateness, but like, my God. My fucking God.
Good idea. Now, Hamas should be wiped from the earth. There's no question.
But how do you do that, Bret? This is an idea. You can't do that. You can't wipe this idea. The only way to wipe the only way to get rid of that idea. In fact, even if you wipe out, even if like you fucking snap your finger and everybody died painlessly in Gaza, there would still be a Hamas. It would just be somewhere else. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
like what the fuck?
Terrible people, whatever they were thinking. These are terrible people. And eliminating them would make the world a better place. That's obviously not the same thing as the Palestinian people. And given the way Hamas embeds itself, what Israel's supposed to do is not obvious. But if there's
This is how an insurgent force operates. It like legitimately, you're not. If Hamas started making a military base, they'd just get bombed. Like, this is how an insurgent force works. That's what insurgency is. An insurgent force is able to just immediately blend in with the fucking community. That's what an insurgent force is. I'm not a fucking genius, and I know that.
They're not allowed to be sovereign and have a sovereign military. So yeah, of course they're going to be both made up of civilians and blend with the civilians.
Right. It's I would like to familiarize this man with the American Revolutionary War. What was the strategy of the American Revolutionary War?
Yep.
that is obvious, Netanyahu shouldn't be in charge of it.
Okay. So that was born of the question as to whether or not there is a genocidal impulse that we can actually put to bed through conversation by getting people to understand what it is.
No, you are not going to put any of this to bed by having a conversation with fucking Bret Weinstein. That is like the fucking, like even a conversation with somebody with some power. You're not going to put any of, like, whatever your goal is. Your podcast ain't it, Tom. This is like fucking, we call it podcast brain, right? This is podcast brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you're not. What the fuck are you talking about? Maybe it's better to just let Bret talk, you dumb motherfucker.
Public.
I don't know. I think he has a chance at solving the world's problems on his podcast.
By doing so, eradicate this kind of thing.
Well, let me add one thing just so it's
please.
clear. We are all the product of genocides.
That does not track for me.
Human history is long.
Yep.
People killing their competitors is common in history. Most of it has been lost. It wasn't recorded.
You're just saying we're the ones that won.
Yeah, we're here, and we are
That's
also
a dumb way to
fair
look at it.
say,
We might be the ones who figured out when to run. I don't know.
That's true. Or we could be the ones who didn't win, but also didn't die.
Right. Fight or, what's the other one? I forget.
Yep.
Human history is very long.
Give me a percentage. What percentage of people do you have are downstream of a rape?
Oh, I think all of us.
What the fuck? Yo.
I mean, that's true, but that's weird.
Yeah, not necessary.
Yep.
I don't use the soundboard a lot during the show, but
Not appropriate.
like, my God.
100%.
Yeah, I think as soon as you realize how long a period of ancestry we're talking about, the chances that there's not a rape somewhere in each of our backgrounds is approaching zero.
That's dark.
It's dark.
Well, no, it's pain. It's like, it's so obvious that it was stupid to even bring up.
Yeah, and also like really weird to say.
Right, just out of nowhere. Well, let's talk about sexual assault and rape. Just out of nowhere. That's fine.
Yeah. Like,
Ideas.
I understand they were talking about war, not the same thing.
And
you don't
conquest
need
used-
to bring up one just because you're talking about the other.
We have this fucking weird sort of idea of barbarians coming in and like killing the men and raping the women, but I'm not sure that was just the way that it was in ye olde times. I think that people had restraint. Those people weren't fundamentally different than us. They just had less technology and stuff. So I'm not sure that every occupying force behaved that way in the past. I hate this idea that the people, it's sort of like akin to the Neanderthal conversation, actually, right? You're like, oh, they were all primitive. And it's like, well, so were humans. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
sort of akin to that discussion.
And also the idea that like your group, whatever your group is, you know, your country or your race or your nationality or whatever, like the idea that your group wouldn't do those things if they were in power, when it's like every group has a certain percentage, like every single human population in all of history has a certain percentage that absolutely does those things when they're given the opportunity.
Yeah, that's
like
weird.
Even
too,
without a war, people do those things.
That's weird too. Yeah, that they're just talking about like rape as a thing that's like far back in your history, whereas like no, there's somebody you probably in your family. If you are connected with your extended family, there are people in your family who have had that happen to them during their lifetime, during your lifetime. Like this isn't an old timey thing that used to happen. It's a little bit weird too, right? A little bit.
Yep.
What's the opposite? It's like the opposite of ahistorical. It's like denying the present almost.
Yeah.
Sort of like that Steven Pinker shit where he's like, oh, everything's great now.
But it's also, yeah, it's dark. Look at it. But once you have looked at it, realize what that means. The potential for rape and genocide is something we all carry. We are also capable of getting past it.
You know what? So like he's an evolutionary biologist. So like I want to speak directly to him and tell him, you know what would fix that? Abortion. Because then you could eliminate the problem of like forcing someone to carry a baby to term if they were conceived through rape.
But also, I don't like, also, I guess built into that maybe is an assumption that he's making, because he's a bit of a biological essentialist too, is that if you were born of a rape, that you are necessarily more likely to commit one yourself. And I'm not,
like I don't think that's genetic, but like let's go into his fantasy world where, you know, everything is genetic. In that case where like you eliminate the reproductive avenue of rape, then rape no longer is an evolutionary strategy. So
right.
Yeah.
Because it had a significance in ancestral times. That's where liberation comes from. We don't have to live that way. We can actually sit and write down our values, and we can say, what is the system that actually makes us realize those values at the highest level, right? What would we like to happen with rape? Well, we would like it to go to zero. Likewise, genocide. That's what it means when we say never again. So when I say that there's a genocidal impulse on both sides, we are seeing the predictable outcome of a zero-sum game in the Middle East that is triggering potentials that we all carry, right? We can see exactly why we have to take these potentials seriously in this conflagration. And the right thing to do is actually not beat each other over the head, each side accusing the other side of genocide. The correct thing to do is to recognize this was predictable, and we have the power, if we'll stop dicking around with nonsense, we have the power to make the future better than the past.
Man, I'm with you.
Okay, cool. How is that useful?
It's not. It's just like, hey, everybody, it's this, it's the same thing where it's like, well, we as individuals need to blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no.
He didn't even say that. He just said, we can make the future better. It's like, okay, maybe cool. Like some concrete steps towards that would be a little more useful.
Yeah, but if you really press him on it, it's like, listen to me and my brother. I mean, it's going to be
like, how about this as a concrete step? Do not fund Israel at all until they agree to no longer commit genocide in Gaza.
This has just become an interview where throwing out a platitude of "I hope everything's going to be okay" just does not feel right.
Even Tom Bilyeu was like, "Nah, I don't know about that." This was like a chalkboard that Bret was supposed to write on. It's like the chalkboard talking back to you.
Ask the more revealing question. It is not agreed upon as to whether what's happening right now is genocide. And this is, there are several things you feel like nobody's listening to you. You're screaming from the rooftops and people just aren't getting it. I have a very similar sense when I talk to people about somebody's frame of reference, the whole life beer goggles. That
now I feel attacked.
How they interpret what people are calling facts. And people oft quote Ben Shapiro and say, facts don't care about your feelings. Bro, we cannot agree on what the facts are, or certainly we can't agree on what the facts mean. And I actually don't think people...
Can we pause it for a second, go over like one thing that I think is going over Bret's head here is that he's trying to equivocate between at least Hamas and Israel, right? He's trying to equivocate, saying like, well, Israel's only doing to Hamas what Hamas did to Israel. But no one on the face of the earth is arguing that Hamas is currently committing a genocide against Israel, right? But a lot of people right now, just like this guy is saying, can't decide whether Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians.
Right, whether or not an impulse is there. Again, like I think I said it like I know it was like half an hour ago, but it feels like 6 months ago now because I feel like we've been sitting here. I feel like I should have died of hunger while we were watching this at this point. But it's like, who has the means? That's it.
Yeah.
Like I could want to, like whoever the best fighter in the world is, right? I could want to beat them up, but it fucking doesn't mean that they should just whoop my ass because I want to beat them up. Obviously, they have the means to whoop my ass, and I don't have the means to whoop their ass. So, as Frost once told us, if you remember, when we talked to the Bullshito guy, I was like, "Howdy, what do you do if you're, if you feel like you might get in a fight? What's the best thing to do?" He's like, "I don't know, run." He's like, "Whether or not you can win, just run." He's like,
"Yeah,"
and so, oh man.
A game. I think people don't understand how distorted all of our worldviews are, that we actually see only the distortions. And to us, you're going to get people that look at this and go, obviously what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. Obviously. And you're going to get people that obviously that's not genocide. This is crazy. I can't even believe we're having this conversation. And each side thinks the other's trying to play a linguistic game or something like that. And they're missing what I think is the real truth, which is they see the world so ferociously in one way. There is literally nothing that you could show them, and I mean nothing, that would make them go, oh, I see your point. And because there is literally nothing that you could show them, like, let's set the Jews aside for a second, because this just gets so weird so fast, especially right now. In Rwanda, like almost 1 million people were hacked to death with machetes in like 6 weeks. So that's insane. And
I questioned that entire statement. 6 weeks, 1 million people in machetes. I don't know enough about Rwanda, but just the numbers there the numbers and the weapons, it doesn't seem to add up, but I don't know, but that seems like an unlikely thing to happen. If that many people were wiped out in 6 weeks, I have a feeling that things that were higher technology than a fucking giant sword were used.
It keeps happening. Now, I've not researched the Rwandan genocide, so for all I know, they were both like, yeah, this is genocide, and it's completely justified, which then just enters another problem, which is, yeah, it's genocide. What's the problem? People really become convinced I am doing God's bidding. I am doing the just and right thing in what I'm doing. And the only way that I see getting to the other side of that is everybody has to wake up to one simple fact. Ideas control everything. And what I mean by that are you believe certain things to be true. You confuse it for objective reality, which is physics. But you believe certain things are true. Call it is. Then you have a set of things, your values, that you believe ought to be true.
Oh man, this guy just fucking completed his first day of a philosophy class in his freshman year at a university. Good job, dude.
Now you have is, which they confuse for objective reality, and ought, which they often confuse with just self-evident or divine, whatever. And like, this is non-negotiable. And both of those things will be ferociously debated by the other side, who sees the truth of neither. They have their own is and their own ought. And so until we all go, I know I'm in the grips of a delusion. I cannot see things clearly. And so we all have to come to some set of shared values, and then you build up from that. If we can't share values, no matter how much you talk about genocide, you will death loop because people will just sidestep it by saying, but this isn't genocide, or genocide is right. Yeah, it is genocide, but hey, it's what we have to do.
That was a very good summation.
You know what you were saying about podcast brain?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus, dude. While we're at it, why don't we just invent faster than light travel?
Well, I mean,
and
like
cure
I said,
world hunger too.
Like I said, this guy just invented like the first week of a philosophy class. Like that's all he did. May not even be the philosophy class. He invented like the first week at the dorm where you just stay up all night smoking weed and talking about what you believe to be philosophy.
I also believe, I think distinguishing between beliefs and values is crucial. What you're saying with respect to we are all suffering a delusion, I agree is correct. I call this the Cartesian crisis, and I think we are knee deep in it. And it is, if you understand its implications, it's terrifying. The Cartesian
Bret gave it a
crisis,
cute
I
name.
Named it that after Descartes, who became spooked when he realized that all of the things that he thought were facts, what you say, you think it's physics, but it's beliefs, he had not established himself and therefore was taking it on some kind of authority. The problem is that the systematically induced blindness that is being inflicted on the public is creating a scenario in which we really can't establish much of anything. And that does leave us vulnerable to being sold a narrative, right? It just fills the vacuum of what you might actually believe in common. The obvious right thing for us to want is an agreement on basics, that enlightenment is better than deciding what you're allowed to believe. For example, let's pursue enlightenment. Let us agree to share facts. We can differ over values. We should talk about which values should govern how we are to live. But we should not be differing over the basic facts. And we should be, and this is crucial,
if you love coffee and a little bit of caffeine, but hate from
That was rude to cut him off like that.
Fuck it. I respect it.
the one tool that actually allows us to establish those facts in a way that is utterly nonpartisan. Science works because it is built to tell you what you do not believe. It corrects for biases. If it were not for this one value, it wouldn't be worth doing. It's too cumbersome and slow. But because it is the only system that allows you to see exactly the thing that you do not expect, it has the capability of telling us what is true, and to know that it is true on the basis that it predicts things better than some other idea. So that's the tool. It belongs to no one, or it belongs to us all equally. And those who politicize it are putting us all in jeopardy.
Wait a minute. Didn't this guy politicize the science around COVID as
Yes.
as like his occupation, actually? His prime occupation for, 3+ years, actually, was his to politicize and self-aggrandize about how he knew better. Also, this is weird because the scientific method was giving us results that went in one direction, and Bret was like, but you must listen to me and go the other direction.
Yep.
This is
Yeah. Bret is a fan of science until it disagrees with him.
And it doesn't even disagree with him, right? Because it doesn't have the the way he's describing it, it wouldn't even have the agency to disagree with him. It's just the results of the work would be going the other direction, right?
Yep.
That's so weird, like hearing him say that, actually. But that's because the institutions are corrupt. Oh, I forgot about that. Remember, all the institutions are corrupt. Fauci. Nobody's listening to Robert Malone or fucking, what was that guy's name? Steve Kirsch. I called him anti-vaccine Jim Cramer. He saw a baby's head explode. So
This is why I'm trying to bring this tool to people in this way and show them that it applies to the things that they're battling over, and that the only way out is through. We have to learn to wield this tool to figure out where we even are in an era where all of the institutions that should be doing that job are failing at once.
yep, there we go. He's like, so all the fucking people that are doing it, they're all wrong, actually, because I'm right. Because I think so. Like he just fucking everything he just said. It wasn't even like a house of I don't know. I don't even know what nobody built. He built like a mound out of sand, not even a house out of cards. And then he just said, "Fuck it, I'm kicking over the mound."
Yep. Again, like he agrees with science only when it agrees with him.
Right. And if they come to different conclusions, or for example, if they laugh at his brother's absurd theory, well, the institutions are just corrupt and they're out to get us.
Yep.
Are institutions perfect? No. Is there corruption within institutions? Yes. But does that mean that we should just pick our favorite internet personality and decide that they're the science? Well, no, that's crazy.
Yeah, I like this guy's science fanfic the best.
Right? No, I mean, you can like it, but like, it's just so crazy. Nobody's out to get you, Bret. Well, maybe us and the Majority Report. The Majority Report is out to get you. The science-based medicine publication, especially David Gorski, out to get you for sure. But it's because we don't like what you're doing, and we just wish you would shut the fuck up, take the money and run. You've made plenty of money. Take the money and run. Get the fuck out of here.
It's because he's like objectively making public discourse worse.
Well, all the while complaining that public discourse is bad because people make fun of him.
Yep.
I'm sorry, making fun of Bret Weinstein is a public service.
We
are public servants, really.
That work. Some people think we can rescue the institutions we have. I'm less and less convinced of that. But I know that we can build something that does the job, and we have to stop blood.
And by that, he means podcasts. That's what he thinks it's podcasts. They all think fucking podcasts. Oh, long form podcasting is going to save the world. No, you're just talking to somebody for 3 fucking hours. Like,
yep.
Could you imagine if you and me just had like some whack ass studio that like a 14-year-old gamer would come himself over and just had something that we were pretending was like a philosophical conversation about the state of science in the world? Like, how long into that would you wish that you had one of those false teeth with some poison in it so that you could just end it all? You know, like, man, I like talking to Dave, but I do have this tooth with some cyanide in it. I don't know. It's a toss up. And like, why are we in a 14-year-old's garage?
Each other over the product of scientific inquiry. You know, the facts are what they are, and then the values tell you what to think about them. And if you divide things in that way so that we're not battling over the facts based on the idea that they are somehow themselves immoral, then there's hope.
Can I try an idea out on you?
Please.
All right.
Ooh, ideas. It's time for ideas.
I think that the way the human animal is designed, that there is no way for us to come to a consensus. The only way to get us to operate in mutually beneficial ways is to tap into other base shit, which I will just round to greed, but I don't mean in a bad way. I think the only way out for something like Israel Hamas is to get people obsessed with the future of their children. If you believe that the brightest future for your kids could be getting killed, being martyred, going to heaven, then...
I'm not sure that people believe that. There might be somebody, but they're probably on Twitter and not even in fucking Gaza. What a weird thing to do. What the fuck?
Yeah, I'm struggling to follow him here.
So I thought he was going to go the other way with like the McDonald's in Russia solved the fucking Cold War thing. I literally thought he was going to be like, but McDonald's there, or some version of that, right?
Yeah.
That idea traps you. now violence is rad. Like that's a great way to ensure that your child has a wonderful future. If, on the other hand, you believe my child's future can be full of education and, I guess I'll say, terrestrial love here on this planet for at least this period of time, and tomorrow's going to be better than today, and that they're going to make progress and it's going to be wonderful and they're going to grow up and they're going to...
If I lived in Gaza, I'd have a hard time believing any of that right now, actually. If I had kids, I'd be like, oh, my kid's going to be full. I'm like, my kid's still here. That's amazing. Like, that's fucking dark. I'm sorry, but like,
Yeah.
Like, you see that building that used to be where I live. Now I'm not even really sure where I live right now. So maybe just maybe that those aren't really the, now you're in fight or flight. I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow might be worse than today. Who fucking know? Like, you even take the fucking any of the moral judgments out of it. If you're in a fucking war zone, you're not really, it's not rational to be focused on that, even if that's what you want long term.
Yeah, I also don't feel like he's giving people like he's giving a realistic I don't feel like he's putting himself in that situation realistically. Like obviously people aren't going into that situation like being under basically an occupation for like, how long's it been? Like 70 years?
Yeah, the whole time.
Like I don't think people are in that occupation going like, I think the best way forward is for my kid to martyr themselves. Like that might happen, but like I'm sure people aren't happy about that. So I really don't feel like he's being realistic at all towards like anyone's actual feelings.
Right. This is very, very odd. I just can't imagine like if your fucking house just got blown up, I'm not sure that you're like, oh, I sure hope my kid goes to a good school. It's like, oh, that's a very like very detached, very, very kind of elitist way to think about the rest of the world, you know?
Love, and they're going to have kids, and this is going to go on forever. That feels like when I look backwards to identify how to move forwards, I go, yes, you want progress, health and safety.
Wait, somebody in the chat just mentioned too, we actually do celebrate Americans who died in combat. That's correct. Societies actually do celebrate. We have we have the Vietnam Wall that celebrates Americans who died in combat. We have Arlington National Cemetery. That's for military people. Like,
well, like you don't want your kid to die in combat.
Right. You don't want them. You're like, oh, you might be like, oh, if my kid's in the military, if they happen to die, it would be, it would be nice if they were honored at Arlington. Right. But you're not thinking that that's what you want.
Yeah.
But also the person in the chat who brought that up was a very good point, is actually, we do honor people who died in combat. Most society, that's a thing that society has always done. So it's the way they're talking about it is just it's like racialized and is it's through the lens of Islamophobia, essentially, right? Is that those savage Muslims want them kids to be martyrs, and it's like, well, parents are proud of their kids who died as a war hero or whatever, like in countries, because it's just one of the ways that you rationalize the brutality of war, right? You have to rationalize that now your kid is dead because of a war that you didn't choose. So it's not an unreasonable response to rationalize it and say, well, they were a war hero. And if somebody tells me their kid died in war and was a war hero, I ain't fucking trying to argue with that person. My God, their kid died in a war, right? Like, I'm not.
Yep.
Far be it from me to fucking argue with them, to argue the politics of the war with them. Because first of all, you don't know what their politics about the war are. And like, you just really don't want to piss them off, right? Because there's no point. You get nothing from it. But I appreciate that from the chat. We don't usually talk about what's going on in the chat during the pod, but that was really important, actually. We do that, actually. We do honor people who died in war.
Love for one's kin, to see them grow up, et cetera, et cetera.
I think you're right. On the question of Islam, I will just simply point out that there are numerous examples in the Middle East in which Islamic states attempted to modernize. We're embracing values that were not exactly Western, but were moving in that direction.
And then the United States bombed them.
And I believe that, unfortunately, for reasons that in the end were profoundly economic, we have disrupted this process. We in the West have disrupted this process, and
Oh shit, he agrees with me. Look at that.
has created a
They have oil. I mean, they need freedom.
that did not need to happen.
How did we disrupt it?
Well,
Well, the CIA says none of it ever happened. So
the Shah of Iran was installed to basically facilitate transfer of economic resources. We overrode a democratic impulse in Iran, and it has resulted in a theocratic rebellion. So what would have happened if we had not meddled in Iran? Would Iran...
Well, that's counterfactual. We don't know. We only know what did happen. And what did happen, he's I mean, on this one, I mean, you don't got to hand it to Bret, but on this one, I mean, he's right.
Yeah.
But it's also a very old history. It's really interesting. Like when it's maybe I haven't fully fleshed this out, and I'll have to think about it some more. But it's interesting that like the bad things all that are clear all happened in the past. And I do believe a version of that, right? Like hindsight allows you a deeper analysis of things, but it the other thing we did was because of the Cold War, we fucking propped up the Mujahideen in Afghanistan when the Russians attacked, and we called the same people we were calling fucking terrorists were Afghani freedom fighters. Like, yeah, it's other people's ambitions have really kind of fucked up the Middle East because they have natural resources that everybody wants.
May be where it is, or is that entirely the result of resentment against the West that has left a vacuum that has been filled by a, well, to connect it to an earlier part of the conversation, you have these two bases for cooperation. You have reciprocity, which I would argue is the way the modern world should be structured, and there's lineage against lineage violence. And I believe that our meddling in the Middle East has set the course to lineage against lineage violence, which we now largely wrongly blame on the content of the religious doctrine.
Oh, shit. Fucking, you know what? That's a good place to stop as any, because we're going to leave it on a high note here.
Yeah.
Couple things. One, and the reason I'm stopping it is because I kind of got to pee. But also, I want to like kind of leave it on a high note here. I think and we're not watching the rest of this. I can't fucking possibly sit through the rest of this during red light. But I will say, we're naked. My docket's up on the screen. Look at that. I will say that his analysis, I mean, it's close enough to mine. He only
broken
used,
clock and all that.
He only used one example. I would suggest that if we asked him about maybe the Cold War and Afghanistan, that his analysis is similar to mine too. And it was surprising to hear him not just say that Muslims are a bunch of barbarians, and it might be a result of the fact that he's no longer friends with Sam Harris, who that's just mostly like he's like one of those dolls that you pull a string, but the only thing Sam Harris says is an Islamophobia. And so, well, somebody in chat's like, why stop there before he has a chance to piss all over the reasonable point he just made? And that is a valid question from the chat. And sometimes I just got to make editorial decisions on the fly because the show's recorded live. I don't know. I that was a more reasonable Bret than I expected. And the only thing that he just leans into this idea that science is broken and it's mostly personal grievance. And that was the only thing that really actually happened there. That was kind of classic Bret Weinstein. I guess he mentioned too that the government of Israel followed like public health measures, and he thought that was bad and somehow connected to the response to October 7th. I think those are not the same thing. A lot of countries actually listen to public health experts and didn't bomb the shit out of a community they're occupying. So who fucking knows? You want to read the show out, HK?
Will do. Thank you for tuning in to Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific live here on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you like what we're doing, you can check us out live. You can go to our website, echoplexmedia.com. You can see all of our other shows. You can support us on patreon.com/Echoplex and eplex.store. If you are listening live, then on the other side of this song, you can join us for Red Light, where the color of the lights change, the contents of our drinks change, and we go over some maybe more fun, maybe more wild topics. So stick around for that if you're listening live. If you're listening on the podcast, then thank you for listening. This is Boomers by Periscope. I forgot there for a second.